Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 3rd, 2016. Can I have the roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Coniff.
Here.
Salem Derby.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
J.P. Kwasinski.
Here.
Joseph McCoy.
Here.
Daniel Rist.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
Joy Winnie.
Here.
Okay, could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion to accept the minutes of January 20th?
Second.
A motion, a second, to approve the minutes of January 20th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
2 abstentions. Okay. Public speaking time. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to address the council for any topic other than what's in the public hearings, please come to the podium, state your name and topic. Okay, not seeing anyone. Communications from elected officials, boards, and committee. As I said last time, we'll give any precinct or at-large councils a chance to update the city on any new topics in their area. Anyone? Councilor Hayes?
Yep. Tomorrow evening, the Conway School of Landscape Design will be holding a community workshop at 6 p.m. in this room. That is for the Park Hill Trails plan that they're working with the city planner on.
Okay.
So that's at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, any other reports? Okay, and we have no letter, written mail communications or correspondence. Mayor communications, Mayor Cadger, any updates?
This is just a quick a reminder that it's the third annual Winterfest, and that's on Saturday, February 13th, which is just a week from Saturday. And the event begins at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it ends at 6 at the bonfire. So just a little reminder.
Are you going to promise us winner?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go on to standing committees, just for continuity here, and some people are here to talk. I'm going to move to finance.
I had a
sorry.
question for the mayor.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Mayor Cadger, would you mind, there's a question for you. Sorry. Councilor Hayes?
Can you update us on the city engineer, please?
Meaning,
Are we hiring? Have we hired? Where is that in the process?
it's in the interview process, and actually it would be in personnel. It would be the HR director that would be involved in the process.
Clearly,
And
but just
yes.
I was just wondering.
But what
if
we've
we
been
had
doing is what
hired
we've been
somebody.
doing for quite a while. It's been advertised, it's posted, and we're accepting applications.
Where is it advertised and posted?
We advertise in the newspaper, actually. Again, Jane, I believe this one was advertised in the Republican, quite a few places. And all vacancies are posted on our website and on our bulletin board, you know, where all meeting agendas. Where else did we do this? You come on.
The engineer position has been advertised in the Gazette, the Republican. I've posted on all of the local colleges. I've posted it on Worcester Poly's engineering placement ads. We've placed it with Mass Waterworks, American Society of Engineers. It's gone into like 8 or 9 different locations, not counting the schools.
And how long will you be posting the position? Have you gotten a good
Until
response?
Until filled.
Until filled.
It's posted at,
on that one.
right, MMA's the Beacon is the other one.
Great.
But it is posted until filled. We did not put a closing date on it.
Great.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, that'll do.
Okay. So going on to standing committees, we're going to do finance first tonight. Finance, Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked for that so that we could deal with some of the items that the Director of Public Work is here for. First, I wanted to let you know that the kennel donation account, we got some information at our last meeting. The mayor updated it on where we were with legal issues on that, and we were very happy. That should be resolved soon. Next, in front of you is the proposed council budget. This is the budget that the clerk, Barbara Bombard, prepared, and we debated it, eliminated a few items. The budget includes an increase in the clerk's salary. which was proposed last year but then reduced at the request of the mayor for level funding purposes. We once again are proposing that it be increased. She hasn't had an increase since 2007. I believe I was correct. Was that right, Peg? 2007. That would be the increase if you read the line there, $100 a month to $120 a month, and from $65 to $75 a month. Overall budget is, what, $500 and some dollars, it looks like, maybe a little more. But that is what we propose to send to the mayor as our request from the city council. If there's no questions, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Go ahead.
I move that we present to the mayor the requested FY17 proposed budget for the city council.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for the accepting the 17 city council budget. Any questions or comments? Okay, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. The retirement board stipend is up for public hearing. I would like to move to new business. We have a snow emergency declaration. Everybody's going to wonder why we need a snow emergency since it hasn't snowed. As very nicely written on the back of the document, you'll see Patricia Cotton has written us a letter telling us how the money has been spent in preparation for snow that may come and didn't come. But for anybody, just to remind everybody, we leave this budget fairly low because the state allows us to run deficit in this budget if we declare a snow emergency. If we do have a snowstorm, they won't have any ability to purchase new materials. And I'd like the Director of Public Works to come up and explain this, especially since we haven't had any snow, but I understand it completely, but the public may not.
Well, you're absolutely right. And as some of the veteran counselors may know, that this is a budget that we set low to start with. And we know we can deficit spend it. So what happens is that when we get to the point where we can't purchase anything anymore, then we need the council's approval to go into what's called a snow emergency. Last year, we had a banner year as far as snow emergency, maybe $500,000, and we ended up with the salt shed being pretty empty because we didn't want to add to that. So as we were coming to the end of the year, we kind of made sure that we could make it through with what we had. So our salt shed was empty. So the first thing that we had to do this year is put salt back in the shed. We did have one plowable storm, but we did have quite a few sanding events. And on a night like tonight, we get rain. It's not supposed to get cold, but in the past, if it got cold, we'd have to go out and sand every single street because every single street would freeze up. So we did use some salt out of that shed. We had to fill it again. So we filled it again, and we're out of money. When we have a plowing event, we pay for to plow the schools comes out of this budget also. So just for an example, to plow Whitebrook Middle School and the high school, that's $4,500 a storm. So that's quite an expense right there. So there's many things that go into this, not just the fact that there's no snow. We also sand the school during, sanding events. So we're out spending money. I shouldn't say spending money, but we're out putting material down if it freezes up, as well as if we get snow. So right now, our shed is full. If the winter continues like this, we'll have a very low figure going into the snow emergency for next year. And the added bonus is we're going to have some salt in the shed, so we won't have to buy it next year.
Excuse me. Am I also correct that the advantage of keeping the this budget low is that if you set it at a certain amount, then the following year you have to request that same amount or more. So by keeping it low, it gives us the flexibility for bad winters versus mild winters kind of thing as well, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments, Director? No? Okay, Councilor Rist.
To remind our new members of the Finance Committee, what happens now is if we pass this evening, purchase orders will be in our boxes, usually is starting with me, and the two of us have to sign them. The council does not meet to approve purchases moving forward. Each purchase order is given to us so that we approve the items that are directly related to snow needs, like the purchase of salt or plowing or anything like that. I'm all set, Joe, if there's...
Great. Thank you very much.
So this is an emergency item which can be passed in one session, does not have to go to committee. So I move pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D, the East Hampton City Council, in conjunction with the approval of the mayor, hereby authorize the emergency expenditure of funds for the continued removal of ice and snow in the city of East Hampton during fiscal year 2016, and further, that a majority of the Finance Subcommittee be authorized to approve snow emergency warrants as necessary.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the snow emergency. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion passes.
So we'll all need to sign that. I have two items of new business I'd like to move as first readings. First is an interdepartmental transfer. The amount requested is $6,500 to be transferred from the reserve fund to be transferred to the fire department medical expenses, $4,000, and the fire department equipment, $2,500, for a total of $6,500. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to provide funds for unforeseen medical expenses and to repair fire equipment due to mechanical failures. The second item is a supplemental appropriation request as a first reading. Request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested is $25,602.88 to be appropriated from enterprise retained earnings, to be appropriated to water personnel services, $19,102.88, and sewer personnel services, $6,500. The amount requested would be used for the following purpose: to provide funds for retirement payouts. I move that these two items be sent to Finance Committee for review.
Second. We have a motion and a second to move the previously read interdepartmental transfer and supplemental appropriation to finance. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion passes.
To conclude, our next meeting will be next Wednesday at 5 p.m. in Room 1. Thank you. That concludes.
That concludes. Public safety, I think we'll try to squeeze that in. Councilor Hayes.
Sure. We met last week. Unfortunately, Councilor Derby was unable to attend, so we are going to try and meet again before the next meeting. I am hopeful that we'll be able to get the Paul Street acceptance public hearing for the first meeting in March for City Council. I don't know the date for that one. So I would like a 30-day extension on the Paul Street street acceptance, please.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for a 30-day extension for the Paul Street extension. Any additional questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain, motion passes.
Thank you. This concludes.
Okay, I think we can probably start appointments. Councilor Smith, maybe we can do one more there.
I have a pretty quick report, so I think I can do that. We didn't meet this week because we had no new appointments, but I have 2 mayoral appointments that were received that I would like to make a motion to move to the appointment subcommittee for review.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the appointments of Teresa Lorenko and Brian Dupree to Agricultural Commission, Veterans Council. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, that concludes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We also have our next meeting at February 17th at 5:30.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now I think I'll entertain a motion open public hearings.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second open public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Councilor Rist.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the council for considering a public hearing. Although it wasn't required, I would like the retirement board and other interested parties to be able to speak to this. Before us is acceptance of Mass General Laws, Chapter 32, 26 and 20-4H. What it is a request by the retirement board to accept this chapter so that they may receive a stipend for their work from between $3,000 and $4,500. They requested this, if you read their initial letter, due to enhanced duties and responsibilities required by the law, including fiduciary oversight of the retirement system's investments, undergo annual mandatory education training, annual statements of financial interests, acknowledgments of compliance and conflict of interest from retirement laws. That was the reason for their request. Also, they recommended increasing the stipends for the auditor and the treasurer To remind the council, the auditor and treasurer currently receive $1,500 for their work with the retirement board. The increase, the total increase, there are 5 members, which would mean an increase of $15,000, is out of the operational expenses for the retirement system. This is the retirement system fund. It is not the general fund of the city of East Hampton. This money will be part of the funds, and I don't know how to call it. I guess it's developed over time, and how much the fund will be increased because of this is minor. Unfunded liability will be increased in a minor way. The cost to the city's yearly appropriation will be minor. So that was important. It is not a request from the general fund. A $15,000 request from the general fund would be a major, request. This is the retirement system, which is a totally separate system. And I'll let the finance director or anyone else explain that better than I can. Currently, we appropriate $2,771,000 to the retirement system each year, which pays for the benefits of retirees. For your information, which we gained from, I'd like to thank Councilor Hagan, who sent us this information. There are 102 boards and retirement boards in cities and towns in the state. 71 of them have accepted this. Most are at the $3,000 level, some at $4,500, others in between that. For your information, we discovered that the auditor is a board member. She represents the state, she represents the administration's appointment to the board, financial member. As an ex officio member, she would also receive the $3,000 because she is a board member. The current stipend of $1,500, the debate on that would have been whether or not she would receive that in addition. There was some debate as to whether or not the legislative body, that being the council, could rescind that so that the auditor would only receive the $3,000. But it was discovered through the auditor, who did some good research, that it was the board itself that would have to rescind that. And we received documents this evening, which you found on your desk, in which the board voted to rescind that. There is a question as to whether the board could go to 0 or 200 in that item, but also that our auditor expressed a desire not to take the stipend should it not go to 0. What this means is all members of the board will receive $3,000. The auditor would not receive more than that. Now, in a separate motion, the treasurer, which is our finance director, treasurer of the retirement system, who currently receives $1,500, at the recommendation of the board, would also have an increase to $3,000. That is an action that we must take, which is why there's a separate motion for that. So the motion regarding the auditor is not something we need to do because it was discovered that that's for the retirement system to decide. So we will be moving this evening, number 1, to recommend a stipend for the board members, and number 2, to recommend an increase to the stipend for the treasurer. If you have questions, I'd ask you to ask the finance director or other members of the retirement board, because they're much more versed on this than I am.
Is there anyone from the city or the retirement board who would like to address this at all?
Very quickly, maybe, and answer any questions that you might have. To make it as quick as I can, I would say that the board has been having a great deal of difficulty.
I'm sorry. Just for the record, could I just have your name and position,
I'm sorry.
please?
Yes, my name is James Dunham. Address 7 Overlook Drive in East Hampton. And I started to say we've been having a great deal of trouble keeping board members because of the increasing responsibilities that the board has had. As Councilor Rist mentioned, we have to accrue 18 hours of continuing education now every 3 years. We can get no less than 3 credits per year, no more than 9 credits per year, but they have to, in the aggregate, be at least 18 within those 3 years. We also have to fill out now financial disclosure forms that are quite lengthy and don't only involve us but our immediate families, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, and it's very time consuming. We also have to travel for these educational seminars, and we have 2 conferences a year, one usually in early June and one in September. Each of those is 4 to 5 days long, depending on what they're putting on. And so that's time away from our family or our jobs or what do we have, which is one of the reasons that some of the 5th members of our board have been changing. We had a financial advisor as one of the people on our board, but he owns his own business, and he just couldn't make the Con Ed classes. And if you don't make the credits, the state removes you from the board. We had another fellow that used to own his own insurance agency as a 5th member. The time restraints were just too much. He couldn't do it. And all of this boils down to the fact that you're expected to try to do all of this to the best of your ability, and there's zero compensation for anybody. And as Councilor Rist mentioned, 7 to 1 of the 102 boards already have this compensation. And so I would say in general, that's the reason that we're asking for this. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Winnie?
How many times do you meet in a month or whatever?
Well, okay, we always, by law, we have to meet once a month, so we always do that. Then we usually meet, as of recent, another time or 2 a month, working on different things, policy programs, things of that nature. And then we have to, if anything comes up with retirement issues, somebody's going out, say, on a disability retirement or something, we have to meet. We usually go over all of the medical panel reviews, which we have to do from 3 separate doctors, read them through completely. So it varies on how many people are retiring in a month and what else is going on within the retirement system.
Okay. So my second question is, when you attended your classes, did the city not reimburse you for mileage?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so going forward, if you get the stipend, is the city still going to reimburse you for mileage and so forth?
Absolutely, absolutely. Paying us to get to where we have to go and back in the mileage thing is part of the statute. It says that in the laws, it says that you are entitled to be reimbursed for any expenses down there. Now, if we go somewhere for 4 days, they also pay for our meals and our room. But it's still, we're in class probably from 8:30 in the morning till about 5 at night. And we have to just listen to all kinds of investment people. We have to listen to seminars put on by PERAC concerning some of the recent laws. The changes in the laws are constantly changing. I mean, already this year we've probably gotten, I'm going to say, at least 20 or 25 memos from PERAC that address different laws, different issues, changes there may be, things of that nature. And we always we happen to have our money invested with PRIT, which is a state organization which has turned out to be a home run for us. But whoever you have, then you have to have counselors that oversee the investment people, and you have to watch the investments to see what they're doing, see if you want to change investment companies. Therefore, you have to attend all these classes so that when somebody says to you, well, what's a hedge fund, or do you want to put money into forestry, or, what, a million different things. And each one that gets up and speaks has all their reasons why theirs is the best reason to invest into their property. So we're busy the entire time that we're away, and that's 4 or 5 days out of our life attending, these conferences to make sure that we're astute, if you will, on what we need to do. We have a large fiduciary responsibility. We have over $43 million here that we're talking about. So it's important for us to pay attention and do a good job.
And just a question, Councilor Hayes?
Do you have a copy of the minutes from any of your meetings so we can see what kind of work you're actually doing in meetings? How long is your average meeting?
Again, it depends on what's going on that particular month, how many people are addressing the board, who's coming in. It can range anywhere from, an hour to 2 hours, 3 hours, depending if we have a lawyer there or not. They like to talk more than I do. So, and our minutes, all of our minutes are available. They're all kept at our office at 199 Northampton Street. That's where the Retirement Board is located. Every meeting we have, everything is documented, minutes kept, and they're on file for, I guess, ever.
And how many people are on the board?
5. There is, the board makeup is an ex officio person, which is generally defined as a city auditor. There's a mayoral appointment that can be whoever the mayor chooses. There are 2 elected persons, which is Mr. Emerson and myself, and there's a 5th member, which is an appointed member by the other 4 members of the board, which is Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, any additional questions for? I'm sorry, Councilor Smith first.
Oh, no.
Okay, Councilor.
I just want to be clear on the role of city council in this. We're just going to approve the chapter of the Massachusetts general law for this. You are going to set the stipend.
No.
No, we said
No, you set the stipend, and it was agreed at the sub-finance committee, we were only seeking $3,000, and that's because the law says the minimum that you can pay a board is $3,000. So that's fine. We're not seeking anything higher, and as to my knowledge, the city council needs to accept this provision of the law in order for us to go forward and get the $3,000 stipend, which is not paid in a lump sum. It's paid on a monthly basis.
Councilor
And it's
Smith.
not retroactive.
Councilor Smith.
My original question was, what was your rationale for the $3,000? But I want to make sure I'm understanding. You're saying that would be $3,000 for the board as a whole, or for each individual member? on the
Individual
board?
member.
Okay.
And the law does not allow anything between 3,000, so that's why we're.
No,
starting with
no,
that.
it's if the chapter is accepted, it's a $3,000 minimum.
Can you tell me how many retirees you oversee?
Yes, and Tina, correct me if I'm wrong, 162.
And
But we also deal with all the current employees as well, because the retirement laws impact them. Not the exact same way it does the retirees. Depends on what the law is.
I think I saw Councilor Hayes' hand first. Councilor.
So you had said 18 hours of schooling every 3 years is what you have to do.
It's 18 credits.
18 credits
Correct.
for every 3 years. And then your financial disclosure forms have gotten harder?
There never were any. Those have, the continuing education and the financial disclosure forms have come about in the last couple of years. And so there were no financial disclosure forms.
But you said they're very time consuming, and that's what the
Well,
stipend
and, yeah,
would go
and filling them
towards.
out, they're probably, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 pages long or something, and you know,
Right.
you have to just kind of trudge through it. And they ask all kinds of different questions. You know, how much money you have, or where it is. Do you have investments? What's it invested in? And I think that the purpose
Those all
of-
seem reasonable.
yeah, to make sure there's no conflict of interest or something.
Precisely.
You know.
But you feel like the stipend would cover your time for filling out financial disclosure boards for a board that you sit on?
Yes, that's a great part of it. It's also a big responsibility here. And, you know, we have this fiduciary responsibility kind of thing that's hanging over our head all the time. We have a state agency, PERIC, which oversees all the retirement boards. Plus, we go through audits every 2 years, and we go through 2. And we have to sit down with an actuarial and plan out our structure of our system for the next 2 years. We're going to assume, project what kind of money we're going to make, a dozen different things.
Councilor Wayne, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, but I'll speak when the motion is put on the
Okay.
table. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for this gentleman? No. I guess we're all set then. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Cadger, would you mind, I have a question, maybe you could answer for me, or, so I know, as Councilor Briss was saying, this is not general fund money. Sorry, I'm sorry. This is not general fund money, but it's it taxpayers' money. How exactly does this money, where do we get this money that we were putting into this?
Okay, I'd be happy to answer that, and I think, Melissa probably put some finishing touches on it. Where you were mentioning the $2,700,000, that is, comes from PARAC, and that is what we are responsible to pay out of our budget to the retirement, to the, for the retirement board every year. But the retirement board, I think what you're probably looking for, the retirement board is funded, the retirement is funded by our employees and also by the city. So there are no, the other funds that they would use would be their investments. So those are the three sources of funding. The three sources of funding for our retirement board would be their investments, the monies that is given to the city every year out of our budget, that we are get that from PARAC, and also from our retirees, like what all of us pay into the system every pay period.
So it's a fair statement that taxpayers' money aren't directly funding these?
Taxpayers, unless they're,
Unless they're...
taxpayers' money, it's part of our budget. So, our overall budget that, it's part of budget funds that we pay every year, that we're required.
But it's coming from those three sources you just mentioned. None of them were...
One of them is the city. That
okay. I thought it was a city employee.
2.7 million.
2.7 million is it?
Right.
Okay.
That's the city's fund, the city's part, the city's responsibility, then the employee's responsibility, and then their investments. That's what they're funded.
And for
those
some,
are the funding
so is
sources.
it fair to say that the reason why it's not in general fund is because it comes out before, you have to pay it almost, you remove it before it gets to general fund? Or am I off base here?
I don't think you-
Never mind. I withdraw the question.
No, I think
don't
that's a very,
understand the
I think that's
question.
a- I think that's a very
No,
good question.
that's all right. I just was curious how taxpayers' money fit into this. I'm sorry, I didn't...
I think it's a good question. I think the question, Mayor?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe...
I was going to try to
Councilor Kuczynski.
reformulate the question in a way that I think everyone can understand. The retirement fund, if I understand this correctly, is made up of the three sources that you said. The money that's in the fund, then we invest it, or the retirement board invests it, and either makes money or loses money, depending on the marketplace and what the investments are in. That, in part, is your responsibility, along with the firm that you hire to invest those monies. The retirees' contribution, the future retirees,
Exactly. I was just
the
going to
current
say
employees' future retiree
The current
contributions
employees,
that are
right.
made, and the portion that comes from the taxpayers, the $2.7 million a year, that goes into the fund. So that goes into a main pool, and out of that comes the
There's an actual-
$15,000 to fund the board,
Right.
is what we're
There's
proposing.
an
So it is
actuarial
kind
study
of,
that's done that you've seen, and that's where, it's determined, what the city's share of, is to be paid every year.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that in your, when you open your budget, where that comes from.
Okay.
so it is public funds in part. Yes.
All our funds.
Councilor Smith?
But some of it's retirement
I-
funds.
Mayor Cadger, I believe.
There was a statement made earlier about how many cities do this versus how many cities don't, and I was just hoping for some more detail on that. If it's cities in the eastern part of the state versus western, if it's a certain size, what?
I actually have that for you, and I'll try to find it.
I thought there was eight Western Massachusetts communities that are in there, and I think it includes Amherst, if I'm not mistaken.
That's all the cities and towns in the state, and that tells you how many are accepted. I just gave it to her. It was given to us by
There
Mr.
were,
Hagan.
yeah. Here you go.
So it's less than half.
It was 71 out of...
71 out of 102 is a lot more than half.
Does that
Oh, I
mean
thought 100
they,
was
that they haven't
three-quarters, no.
accepted the statute, but could they be paying a stipend anyway?
No.
No.
You can't pay the stipend without...
Unless
No,
ex-
let me,
Without accepting the
Mr.
statute.
Burke.
Okay,
This
if we could just try to keep an order here. Councilor Rist?
Just to clarify, the stipend that can be paid is to the treasurer of the retirement system and to the auditor of the retirement system, which we currently do at $1,500. The board members can't receive a stipend unless we accept this law.
Got it.
So the board members are not receiving it, and I'm correct on that. No board in the state can receive this stipend unless they, and I wanted to let the council, as Councilor McCoy alluded to, we would have, of course, started at a lower figure than 3,000 just to get us started with this if we could, but the state in there, I guess they felt that 3,000 was a appropriate number.
Thanks.
So that's why it's at 3,000. And for this, Counselor, I wanted you to know the reason I voted in favor of it is because it's not a case of affordability. This is something that's spread out over time, and it is a very minor hit to unfunded liability in the retirement system and to our appropriation. It is whether it's deserved. And the amount of, my feeling was it was deserved, given the amount of responsibility they have. It's not about how long it takes, how much time. A guy like Mr. Dunham has been doing it for, 25 years, however long. He can do the job faster than anybody else because he knows the law and he's been doing it. So it's not about time, it's about responsibility. And I've always felt that people in this nature should receive compensation when they're given a great deal of responsibility over a multi-million-dollar fund. So that's why this council voted for it. And I just wanted to, I'm hearing things about time and how long it takes them to do things. I've decided that that was not the nature of the request. It's whether it's deserved and whether their responsibilities meet the requirement. That was my metric for voting yes to this. And I just want to let the council know that the Finance Committee voted 3-0 in favor of it.
Okay, now, if there's anyone else from either Timing Board or the public who would like to address the council concerning this topic, feel free to come to the podium and state your name. Okay, I guess we're back to you, Councilor Rist.
I guess I'll make a motion then. There'll be two motions, if I can find them.
I'm sorry, Councilor.
Yeah.
Hayes?
I'm a little reticent because this is a board that meets in Northampton, and do they meet publicly?
On Northampton Street.
So your records are on Northampton Street? Okay. So do you post your meetings? Do you have your minutes available, like, on the website so that the public can, because if we're paying a board, I would like that to be really transparent so that anybody could see what this board.
They answered that question, and they have done that.
So the records are available to the public? Are they electronic or?
They are subject to open meeting law, just like everybody else.
So you videotape all of your meetings and everything?
That's not part of the open meeting law requirement.
But
They
we
should.
do audibly tape all of them, yes. And then they are transcribed down into written form, hard copy, and kept on file at the office.
At what office?
199 Northampton Street, 3
Okay, so you guys have your own office?
Yes, we do.
I was going to make a motion,
Okay.
but if councilors have any other questions for members of the board, we should do that first.
Because once a motion is on, we can't call it for the public, so if you
You'd
have
be
a
making a
question.
motion on which,
I'm going to make a motion on first on both. No, I'll make a motion first on the stipend for the board and then a motion for the treasurer.
because I guess I had some questions about understanding the history. Obviously, the history was there was no compensation before for any of
for the board.
regular board members,
Right.
including Mr. Dunham, who's been with us for 20 years, doing considerable responsibility. I'm trying to understand the role of the treasurer and the auditor within this and the time that is taken. So I guess if we approve the board, then it becomes if we approve the stipend for the board, then the board has the full authority at that point to approve stipends for the auditor. Is that correct?
Right, and they've agreed to remove the stipend for the auditor that currently exists so that she would only receive $3,000, which is what she would get as an ex-official member of the board. And the documents we received this evening indicate that that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The treasurer has a great deal of fiduciary responsibility towards this system. She has to maintain it. And that's why she receives a stipend now. And it was agreed by the Finance Committee and the board that she should be increased to 3,000 as well as the board members. The total increase being $15,000 over the current 3,000.
So I guess I'm going to ask the treasurer to come up if the finance director.
She's called the treasurer of the retirement
Of the
system,
retirement system.
finance director of the city.
Just to be able to clarify the role that you hold in terms of, as finance director, treasurer of the city versus the role on the board as treasurer to the board? No.
So Chapter 32 requires that.
A little louder, please. You can't hear.
Chapter 32, which is the Mass General Law that creates the retirement system, requires a standalone retirement board, which is what the city of East Hampton has. We have we're not a regional board. Requires that the treasurer of the municipality be the treasurer of the retirement board. So my role in that is that so every time they have retirement payments to retirees, I work with Tina to get the banking done for that, just like I would a payroll for the city, getting the tax payment made, doing the direct deposits, processing the checks, and balancing the day-to-day operational account that the retirement board has versus their investment account. So it's and then annually, I work again with Tina to do the tax reporting, which for the retirement system is a 1099, which has to be in balance with what's called a 945 tax report, which is similar to like if you did payroll to do a quarterly withholding tax. We do withholding tax for the retirees. And so that the basic responsibility of the treasurer is to help keep the cash flow going and operate the checkbook to make vendor and payroll payments to the retirees and any vendors that the retirement board has.
So I'm trying to understand, so that role that you serve to the board sounds almost like a role you would serve to the various other departments in the city that have payroll expenses, that have...
It cannot run on the city's budget. It doesn't run on the city's system. It's a separate system, and it's a separate entity. The retirement board is not under the city umbrella. It's a standalone organization with its own tax ID number and therefore operates in some sort of autonomy from the city, but is closely connected to the city because it is a supportive role to our employees and our retirees. And then therefore we as a municipality have a responsibility to maintain it, hence the appropriation that we make annually, because it's part of our benefits, but it is a standalone organization.
And so the $1,500 is paid to you from the retirement board?
Correct.
As a separate
Correct.
check, separate?
Yep.
Okay. And you've had that $1,500, as has every other treasurer
Yes.
before? Not everyone.
I'm not sure
but
when
everyone, but
it
the previous
started, but
ones.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Okay, any additional questions? No, thank you.
Before I make the motion, any other counselors have questions for retirees or administrative personnel? I will make a motion. I wanted to make this clear. The Finance Committee was clear in that it would pass both motions, and we supported the motion to increase the treasurers to 3,000 along with the board's increase. They were, in our minds, necessary. It would be, well, in any way, we wanted them both to be increased so that everybody had the same fund. I move that the City Council accept the provisions of MGL Chapter 32, Section 26, so as to provide compensation to members of the East Hampton Retirement Board up to the amount of $3,000 per year.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any additional questions or comments among counselors? I'm not seeing anyone. Mary Ann, could I have a roll call on this, please?
Dan Carey,
Yay.
Peg Coniff,
Aye.
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Jennifer Hayes,
Abstain.
J.P. Kwasinski,
Yes?
Joseph McCoy,
Abstain.
Daniel Rist,
Yes.
Tamara Smith,
Yes.
Joy Winnie.
Yes.
So it's 7 yes and 2 abstentions.
Motion passes.
I make the following motion. I move that the City Council accept provisions of MGL Chapter 32, Section 24H, so as to provide compensation to the treasurer as custodian of the funds of the East Hampton Retirement System up to the amount of not more than $3,000 per year.
Motion a second for Chapter 32B, Section 24D and half. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry, one abstention.
Mr. President, I move that the public hearings be closed.
Is there a third one? Or no?
No, we don't have to do the third one. That's retirement system's own jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yes.
So so there's a motion to close the public hearing. So there's a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Well, let me see where we left off. I believe ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ordinance did meet on the 27th of January, where we were able to talk to the city health agent around the food truck ordinance. Got some questions answered. And right now, we're still fact-finding and determining whether such an ordinance would be beneficial to the city or whether any ordinances relating to that would be beneficial to the city. So that's something that's still in deliberation. We also started to review some of the sign inconsistencies that the city planner had shared with us, and we're planning on taking a look at those at our next meeting, which is the 24th at 6 p.m.
Okay, terrific.
That concludes.
Okay, property, Councilor Kwasinski.
No report this evening.
Okay, now back to rules and regulations, Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of things. First on our topic was electronic agenda discussion. What that means is that we would receive electronically all agendas and supporting documents. The clerk of the council, Barbara, would send us what is called a PDF. We all probably know what they are, to our email addresses. We would have the ability then to store them in our own files and print what we would need. The advantages to this, obviously we could store things electronically and recall them as we need to rather than look through paper documents and lose them. I do that a lot. They are easily distributed to the public and to ourselves and to anyone. It's all public document, so therefore that adds to transparency. One of the things we did discuss at the meeting was the fact that we did not want the clerk to have to print some documents and scan others. She seemed perfectly willing to scan the documents because that's the same as copying them in a sense, but doing both was an extra burden. And I believe, and the other counselors on the Rules Committee can speak to this, the consensus was we would do one or the other. The Rules Committee is not prepared to recommend yet. We wanted to let everyone know if we choose to do this, you would all be responsible for, you could bring your own laptop to the meetings and call up your documents as you need them, or print your own documents if, like me, you want to write on them or anything. But the documents would still be available to the public like we leave the agenda out. She would still print those. So we're not prepared to recommend yet. We wanted the councilors to hear where we're at with it. It's going to be one or the other. And I'd ask the other Rules Committee members to speak to it if they'd like to. But we will bring it back. Unfortunately, I can't tell you when we're going to have another meeting because there's some debate as to when that could happen, to finalize our discussion on it. It is a modern age, and this counselor feels that it would be an advantage to me because I do lose paperwork a lot. And of course, we save trees. On the other hand, it's a lot of documents. Sometimes we get large packets, so it's something to consider. So we all want you to dwell on that and maybe come to the next Rules Committee meeting, which may not happen for a while. But when we do make that discussion, if you have anything that you'd like to bring forward as to whether or not you find this difficult for you. It's clear to this counselor that I would not like to make the clerk print some packets and PDF the other packets. That's not fair. So I'd like to, the other counselors want to say anything, or Counselor McCoy, Counselor Whitty, to this or no?
So, Counselor West, was it my understanding that you'd like at the next meeting to take a vote amongst the counselors once they've had some thought, some time to think about how they would like to
I think
see
the
it?
Rules Committee has to make a recommendation. We didn't vote on it yet,
Right.
so.
But were you hoping to do
We
an
could-
additional council vote after that?
Yes. Well, it has to be, to me, it has to be a rule, it has to be something the council would have to, by majority, vote for.
Okay, Counselor Hayes?
You had said you were bringing it up at this meeting to get feedback from the other city councilors.
I'm asking if people want it, or they could bring it to the other council, to the Rules Committee, or...
So, yeah, I mean, I obviously think electronic is the way to go, for sure. I mean, I think the end user is the public, not the city councilors. So we have to make it as easy for the public as we can.
Okay, Counselor Smith?
I also am in favor of electronic for the reasons that Councilor Hayes stated, but also additional reasons. Knowing that this is all of our part-time jobs and we have full-time jobs during the day, not necessarily in East Hampton, I don't like having to come at night to a closed-up building by myself in the dark to get my notes if that's the only time I can. I feel that's a personal safety issue that can easily be handled by making that electronic. So I strongly feel that that's an accessibility issue that we need to address as the council. And I also feel that if we look at our resolution to be as diverse as possible, part of that is reaching as wide an audience as possible. So I think that as well, having it electronically would reach a wider audience. So my reason, again, is slightly different, but I wanted to add that to the discussion.
Counselor Derby?
I would echo those comments. I would say, having 10 years of city council papers in my basement, it is a lot of paper. And I think, to be a more environmentally conscious council, it makes a lot of sense to not have that much paper. And I think it's pragmatic because it would save us a lot of money just on printing and toner and paper, and that makes sense because that saves taxpayers money.
Any other questions? Counselor Carey, this is how the school committee receives their agendas, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you like that and found it easy and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, it was convenient to get it in the email because, like Councilor Smith said, it just came right to you instead of you having to go to it. As Councilor Riss said, I prefer to have them printed out, so I would get the email and I would print them out and bring a hard copy with me. So it kind of seems to work for no matter how you like it. You get it both ways.
Yeah, that's that was only my concern, especially if I'm running a meeting and I have a public hearing from public safety, from ordinance, we'll be shuffling PDFs and printing out. And when I go to meetings, I kind of like to have it right. But as I said, there's nothing to prevent me from, even if I just print out the cover page so that I have something to write notes in the back of it, would be accessible. But I'm in a cranky mood tonight. But the one argument that I do not like is that the lack of time to get your minutes, because this has been done this way. We've had 5 days, not just at night, but during the days, weekends. You have a key to the building. When you run for city council, you should maybe know how people get their meetings. But so I'm not saying, there's a lot of good things, but for me, the one that resonates at least with me is that I don't have time to get it.
I just want to clarify that I never said anything about time. I said it about safety.
Right, but at night, but it made it sound like there's the only time you can come here is at night.
If that's the possibility, I'm putting myself at a personal safety risk, which is not the same as time.
No, but
it's not a time convenience for me, but if it's closed and I have to get here after hours, that's a safety issue for me. It's not a time issue.
No, but it's open during the day on the week. It's not only at night. Never mind. So that was my point. But anyway, any additional questions or comments concerning this, Councilor Krasinski?
Certainly in terms of having the public have access to documents, we need to get those documents out there in PDFs. That's an absolute, in my opinion. In terms of the counselors, I kind of am in favor of each counselor having their own preference. If they want paper, have paper documents. If they want to have electronic, have electronic. In terms of, I'm trying hard to understand the clerk's position as represented by Councilor Rist. that it would be an extra burden on the clerk. The information is there, you put it in the scanner, you push a button, it either scans, you put it in again and it copies, and been copied for years, all the time. I know that sometimes the agendas are long, sometimes the documents are long. There can be 20, 30 pages worth of material. I know sometimes the school committee agendas, I see them at home now. My wife gets them. There's up to 75 pages on that. It's quite an expense to go ahead and copy those documents at your own expense. I'll remind everyone that the council's currently paid $3,000 a year for all its responsibilities. And there isn't a lot of, it costs a lot of money to print these. But I guess my point really is, I would like to see councilors have the option of having one or the other, or in fact both, if that's what they need. I know it helped me to have the material on the retirement board before me in printed form as I flip through the pages. Now, I'm not sure I'd be as adept at flipping through on an electronic device of some sort. So,
Control F. Councilor Rist?
One of the reasons I didn't want to bring this forward is the clerk was not going to be here this evening, so I'd like her to be able to respond to your query. And therefore, perhaps if I could get the Rules Committee to meet maybe prior to the next meeting, we could make a decision to bring it forward at that time. And if you both can meet at, say, 5:30 at the next meeting?
It has to be later than that. What, next Thursday or something?
No.
Oh,
before the next meeting. You probably
appointments.
Okay. Well, we'll find a time when we can meet. But that's the reason I wanted the clerk to be able to respond. I receive all my documents for the CPA now that I'm on the committee electronically, and I actually liked it because I just printed the ones that I needed, and I filed the others. So there is a lot to be said for that. I don't want to add, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't want to add new work to the clerk. I don't think it's necessary. I think she's very happy to do the PDFs if that is the pleasure of the council. To print them and to scan them is new work. So that's just me speaking for her, so I'd rather she spoke to it too.
Councilor Winnie?
I don't care either way. I can adapt to either one.
Did we pay the electric bill?
I do want to tell the counselors and make it clear to them that there will be paper coming forth no matter which way we go with it. There's times when we get maps that are on 11 by 17 pieces of paper. There's times that things come to the council after the 5-day getting the agenda together, just like tonight with the retirement board handing us information, just forthcoming right then and there. So, I have no feelings one way or the other as to which way this goes. I only ask that the city councilors respect our city clerk, who does a lot of work for this council, and if she feels that it might be a burden to go both ways, then we should give her a little bit of respect on that, and we listen to her and to what her feelings are on that.
Okay. Councilor
Thank
Conlon?
you.
I also think that going electronic is absolutely directional in the way we should go. My thought is there any opportunity, if we go forth with this, to have a pilot period so that we can assess the workload of the clerk for a month or two of meetings, reevaluate, and then make it permanent or not? Maybe it does become a burden, maybe it doesn't, but we'll never know.
Yeah, that was our idea, to have
We actually
trial
talked about
period.
that.
Okay.
To have a sunset clause that would say that this would have to be renewed after a certain amount of time by the council.
Then I'm all for that.
So we'll bring it forward at hopefully at the next meeting. I'm going to meet with our councilors to discuss that. The next item up for the Rules Committee was Rule 6F, which is reconsideration. We went back and forth on this and found that it was important to maintain reconsideration, that the language gave a councilor the ability to make an immediate vote or to announce that they would make the motion at the next meeting. The example was, and where it was almost needed, was when we had those of us that were on the last council would remember, we were looking at licenses and whether or not we would need to give a certain amount of licenses, and it was a item up for debate and discussion, and it seemed with absences and with abstentions, we may not get a majority, and I, for one, being in favor, was looking to ask for reconsideration because of the absence of counselors. When we debated it, we realized that the one thing that could happen is that a single counselor could say, I'm going to make a motion to reconsider at the next meeting, and that would delay the action of a positive vote should that counselor have a negative opinion and want to try and block it, which meant that there would be a 2-week period before the next meeting, and that might be, in a time-sensitive matter, a problem. So we added the word special meeting so that the president could call a special meeting, forcing this reconsideration vote and making sure that a measure that the majority favored could have an opportunity to be passed without the time sensitivity creating a negative situation in which one counselor could do. And that was something we thought of. We didn't feel there was any other language changes that were necessary because it was quite clear that reconsideration might be necessary. And that example of the license issue was very pertinent because that was abstentions and absences that might have made for a negative vote. You need 5 votes to pass anything. And that was an important issue. So I thought I would have to do that, but as I recall, Councilor Hagan changed his vote to positive, so we didn't have to do it. So that's where we are, and I'm going to make a motion that this minor amendment to 6F happen. Does anybody have any questions before?
Any questions for it? Okay. Councilor Kwasinski?
I just wanted to try to summarize it because I've read this very carefully many times, thought about it a lot, and I think to summarize, a small number of us could meet and create a quorum and vote not to do something or to do something that the majority of the larger body may feel differently. That's what it sounds like Councilor Rist is talking about. The larger body
meeting of the council. You can't have a small meeting of the council without the entire council being notified.
Well, the entire council can be here. Only they're not here because they're away. They're absent. You have a meeting of 9 people. A majority show up. Quorum. 5. 5. The 5 vote. 3 vote one way. 2 vote the other way.
So the person either way.
So the person who is either side could ask for reconsideration.
Correct.
Could ask for reconsideration, and presumably the larger body would then have an opportunity to weigh in on the subject.
Which is why we're all elected, and that's why we need it. That's exactly why we need it.
Right. I'm in agreement with you. I just wanted to try to re-summarize it.
I'm in agreement with this as well. I'm just curious because I feel like, Dan, you probably have a better grasp of Robert rules than I do. But I imagine if I wanted to delay a vote, could I make a motion to table that item?
If you want to delay a vote, the charter, let's be clear, Robert's rules only applies if no other rule of the council or the state or the charter is not in place. The charter allows for any counselor with a second, which is new, we added that, to delay a vote to the next meeting. And there's other language in there in which a number of counselors would have to delay the vote further. So that is possible right now in the charter. So if there's an appropriation in front of us and we want to, and this happened once, it happened when we were about to lose our term, and one counselor delayed a vote because he didn't like it and knew that the next meeting was in the new term with new counselors. So the president called a special meeting so we could pass the option before the term. That's history. The charter does allow that right now. And again, it's not Robert's rules, because if we have a charter or a rule ourselves, this takes precedence over Robert's rules. Robert's rules is the bottom of the pile.
And that being said, and that's what I was curious about. However, with this, we could have a motion for reconsideration on the tabling and vote on that at a special meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can reconsider any measure if you want to get that complicated.
I just, it's fun to think about.
And remember this, the rules of the council, we could vote to suspend the rules at any time by a majority vote. The rules say, for instance, that we can't re-vote on a measure within 6 months of the time that it was voted on and it was decided one way or the other. But the council at one point did vote to suspend those rules so we could take it up again. So our rules are ours, and we as a majority can change them at any time by suspending them. Reconsideration allows one counselor to say, wait a minute, we didn't have enough people here.
Thank
Any
you for
other
the
questions?
clarification.
Getting sick of talking.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment to Rule 6F. as
Second.
submitted.
A motion and a second to approve the rewritten Rule 6F. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The last
Quick-
item
quick
that I will
question.
speak to this evening.
So we could
You want to
vote to reconsider, that's right.
The last thing that the Rules Committee respectfully asks all subcommittee chairs to submit to the Rules Committee a point-by-point mission statement or the, what was I going to say? The reason for your existence. If you look at the Rules Committee, the Rules Committee actually has a point-by-point, the role of the Rules Committee in the current rules. It was very specific. That's an example of what our committee would like every chair to submit. I believe there was something stated that the property committee already had something like that. It was in the minutes someplace, just never got to the rules. We would put it in the rules. It would help new chairs, new counselors know what each committee is supposed to do. So the role of your committee, we're just asking you to submit those, and once you get them, we'll put them into the rules as specifics.
And I believe the idea was to put on the website as well, Counselor Hayes, so the public knows exactly what these subcommittees' responsibilities would be.
Yep, and the request has also been made to boards and committees that are
But that would, yes.
additional
And
boards.
I think
outside
the
of
the
it.
mayor's acting on that. That
Okay.
concludes my report.
Okay. I think we're down to old business. The boardwalk is still, so, I shouldn't say sorry to say, but we're still working on it, still communicating with the mayor as well as taking new names, people who would be interested in serving on it. We do have a warrant for our election coming up, our primary election. So in a form of a motion, I would like the subcommittee to accept the notice for the presidential primary on March 1st, 2016.
Which subcommittee?
No.
This is just, the whole council is just doing
Oh,
this
you
now.
I
said
meant to say
subcommittee.
council.
Oh, did I say subcommittee?
Yes, you
Okay, sorry, subcommittee, to accept this notification for the March 1st primary. As a reminder, again, the polling for precincts 1, 2, and 5 will be Whitebrook Middle School. 3 and 4 will be East Hampton High School. Again, the primary is Tuesday, March 1st, 2016. So,
I'll make the motion that we accept the
what's it called? Warrant.
the warrant as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion, a second to accept the presidential primary election warrant. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. I think we've concluded, so I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second motion, second adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. I think we have at least one thing to sign.